Hey everybody, this is Chris DeFurio with Keys to the Shop, and this is another Shift Break episode, a short episode that's every Thursday. We put this out, and it's been going really well, actually. I've received some feedback from you all that you're really kind of into this format and the topics that we're talking about. So, yeah, I think we're going to keep this around. So if you want to reach out to me too, by the way, just do so by emailing chris@keystotheshop.com. I look forward to hearing from you. So today's episode is laziness and the most important decision. It's actually more accurate to say decisions, because there are dozens of decisions throughout the day where we have the opportunity to choose the right thing or to compromise and choose the road of laziness. Now, laziness is a hard word, We don't ever like to think of ourselves as lazy, but every single one of us, it has a part of us, right, that is lazy. Now, if you admit it or not, over time, I think you'll find some area of your life where you are. But when you're working on bar, there are parts of the job that you just don't like. Things where you just compromise. Areas like dishes, or when it comes to, polishing the chrome on an espresso machine, wiping down tables, tying the trash bags around the cans a certain way that your manager wants you to. You're just like, I'm just going to, shove it down in there and not even worry about it. There are little things where we make decisions that we know are not technically right. They're not really what's outlined in the manual. They're not what we know has been stated as an expectation. And there's also little decisions that we make to ignore internal prompts that we have in our gut, in our heart, to do something for a guest, to do something for a coworker or for the cafe, to go above and beyond. Each time we choose against doing those things, doing the right thing or doing that creative, intuitive, above and beyond thing, each time you decide against that is kind of a form of self-sabotage. And it chooses the road of laziness and builds and paves a way for a career filled with compromise. There's a book that is, there's two books I'm going to recommend actually. And one is Steven Pressfield's book, Do the Work. Now, Steven Pressfield also wrote a book called The War of Art. And it's also dealing with a similar topic. And Do the Work is a shorter book dealing with similar subjects. I've listened to the audio version of this book many, many times because it deals with something called resistance, which is this force that essentially pushes up against you and resists you doing the right thing, resists you doing your work. This is a book written by somebody who is a writer. And as a writer, as a creative, you sit down to do something creative and all of a sudden, you have writer's block, or you're uncomfortable, or Facebook, or, whatever it is. You get an idea for a different project while you're doing one project. This is resistance, right? It's stopping you from doing your work. In barista work, in the cafe, the same thing is true. Except for resistance often just looks like excuses. What are the excuses that we have for not, wiping down the table the way that we know we're supposed to do, or leaving the dishes for the next crew when we know it was our job to do them entirely from start to finish and have them just put away in the right places. We look for opportunities throughout our shift in multiple little ways to make these compromises. And here's the thing. We think that we can contain the practice of compromise to one area of our work. You think, well, I would never compromise when it comes to coffee because I love coffee. That's why I got into this business. Honestly, I didn't get into this business to be really great at cleaning toilets, but I really want to work on my rosettas. I want to work on my extractions and etc., right? Well, guess what? If you make compromises cleaning toilets, it's only a matter of time before you make compromises with your coffee, with anything that you do, because inside your mind exists a particular culture that you are cultivating every time you make a decision. So this decision that you make could go the opposite way of laziness, which is simply to lean into the discomfort of the moment and recognize what's happening. Actually call it out. and say, right now I feel like compromising. And in that moment, by actually observing it, by calling it out, you're robbing it of its power. Those little compromises rely on kind of a state of laziness hypnosis, where it's easy to sort of just kind of roll through the task and let those things go. If you then, after recognizing what's happening, like, man, this is what's happening. If you've pulled yourself out of the laziness matrix and you're like Neo there looking up at, what actually is, then make the next right decision. And that's simply to act on the thing that you know is right to do. If it's a matter of you hating to wash silverware in the dish pit and you got done with everything else, you hate cleaning forks, there's, freaking eggs, I can't get them out of the tines of the forks, where it's easy for you to sort of segment and say, well, I did all these other dishes, so maybe I'll go see if they need help brewing coffee, or, I can give somebody a break on register, and whatever it is that you think you're going to be helpful and sly with, then somebody will come along and sort of take care of those dishes that I left, because I didn't leave technically for a bad reason. I left to help. And so there's this game that we're playing oftentimes to see, like, who can be the last person to the cash register, for instance. Oh, I got to take this trash out. You see somebody coming down the sidewalk, they're going to be at the register. You don't feel like serving people, so you're like, I'm going to take the trash out because it's going to implicate your coworker. That little mental game that you're playing, every time you play that game, you're making it more likely that when you do interact with people, you're going to do a poor job. So think in the opposite way. Lean into the discomfort. Do that thing that is on your heart to do, or the thing that is right to do, and see how that changes the way that you think, the way that you behave. Just like a little bit of compromise leads to more compromise, et cetera, right? So too, good decisions made consistently over time to discipline yourself, maybe just start with something small, over time will lead to an increased likelihood that you'll make the right decision more often than not. So you'll be more likely to do even the most mundane tasks with excellence. You do something that is above and beyond for a coworker or for the cafe or for a customer. And guess what? You're not just going to be spinning your wheels in your job. Not only will you have the personal satisfaction of overcoming that resistance and that little voice of laziness that's in us all, but you will also be more likely noticed by management. It's easier to get ahead in a career and to be offered opportunities of leadership and advancement when you are seeking to advance yourself in these ways. It starts with your internal culture and the decisions that you make every day in little ways. So today on this Shift Break episode, I encourage you to sort of break the cycle that is that decision to compromise in those little ways throughout the cafe and choose the opposite. Move in the direction of excellence and do the thing that you intuit is the right thing to do, or that is the right thing to do according to stated expectations, and even go above and beyond. And see what happens over time. Play it out over the years. If you do this every day, think about how great you're going to be at your job and how satisfied you're going to be with your work. Not only you, but those who employ you as well. So I hope that this episode was helpful to you. Of course, there are many books on subjects like this. A couple of things that I would encourage you to look up in terms of books would be, first of all, that Steven Pressfield book, which is called Do the Work. Second is a book by the Arbinger Institute called Leadership and Self-Deception. This is more dealing with relationships and how we function as a team and decisions we make based on our intuition and things like that. Is really a powerful book. I highly recommend it. And lastly is a book called Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck, where she talks about the growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And of course, in order to embrace this particular subject that we just talked about, you've got to employ a growth mindset. So look up those 3 books, see how they can help you, but don't wait until you read those 3 books to do these things. put them into action right now. You know where these areas are. Eliminate them as much as possible and do it daily and see how you grow. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you have an amazing week, and I will see you here next week on Thursday for another Shift Break episode from Keys to the Shop.